Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance Perspectives podcast. I'm your guest host today, Ciara Gravier from the Bunker Insurance and Risk Management. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Kasey Connors, Executive Director at ACT, the Agents Council for Technology. Kasey joined the Big I in 2017 and was Vice President of Marketing Operations for Trusted Choice since 2019. She is the key driver behind several major initiatives at Trusted Choice, helping independent agencies elevate their online presence and leverage technology to connect with today's digital consumer. Kasey was named Executive Director of ACT in June of 2025, where her focus is to unite the independent agency system in support of agents embracing technology to meet their strategic goals. Kasey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Let's get started with the basics. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the industry.
I got into the insurance industry a little bit by chance. About 10 years ago, I was actually laid off from a job in the hospitality association space that I loved. I took it really hard and was a bit lost, and I was finding, different things. I worked at a marketing agency after that. And I really missed, though, working at, kind of directly on a client side and at an organization. And it led me to an opening at the Big I, which is the Association for Independent Insurance Agents. Before that, I, did not have a direct connection to insurance, but taking that role, helping agents with their marketing efforts and, diving into understanding, you know, the different independent agencies across the country. And also we represented the consumer brand, was really such a great, you know, dive right in and learn and help as, so many of our members are small businesses, and just learning about them was my first foray really into insurance. And I've been at the Big I ever since.
You know what they say, once you get into insurance, you can't get out. You're trapped
Yes,
forever.
that kind of, yeah, it does seem that way. I mean, there is a lot of jobs in the industry, so I think I'm hooked.
Yeah, yeah. Before you know it, your kids are going to be in insurance. It becomes part of your lineage almost.
Yes.
What do you enjoy most about our industries, being that you made the switch from other industries? How does it compare?
Yeah, I think, common thread, that I've had throughout my career is I've drawn to industries or organizations that are very focused on people and relationships. And, particularly the independent agency channel is very relationship people focused. Not only are agencies so involved, just also in their local communities. And I love that about, many agencies across the country, but just being able to, everyone's so very open and wants to talk to each other, even if, they're competitors of someone down the street. I think that is what I love a lot about this industry. It's very collaborative in it nature in itself, in helping each other and supporting the industry overall and people focused.
I would 100% agree with that as far as the support and the collaboration in this industry. I mean, as an adult, I haven't been in any other industry but insurance, but I hear it even from my circle of,
Right.
non-insurance network. And they're just like, you guys seem like so supportive. Like you have so many communities that are so helpful. And we really do. I agree with you 100%. What's the one aspect, would you say, in your opinion, from your seat, do you think that we have room to improve on in our industry?
I think when you think about the insurance industry, even broader, not beyond independent insurance industry, it's a little bit can be a technology laggard. Coming into this primarily first helping agents with their marketing and then transition to digital marketing. When I first started, agencies were still marketing in the phone book, and then from a broader perspective, obviously we're a risk averse industry. So I think right now, even no matter what industry you're in, technology is moving so fast. And our industry, I think, is catching up. But one thing, I think us continuing to, hopefully challenge the status quo a little bit, and how agencies are thinking about maybe some of their legacy systems, but just technology in general. And maybe, I think that would be one area that I think our industry could improve upon, particularly from my seat from ACT in seeing how agents, from a technology perspective.
Can you give us a little bit of insight on what ACT is doing for the industry?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. To kind of give an overview, ACT as the Agents Council for Technology at the Big I really is a neutral forum that is made up of technology partners, including HawkSoft, as well as carriers, MGAs, and then agents. So they come together in support of holistic collaboration in technology, removing some friction points. Like right now, talking about just data being entered in multiple places, or talking about connectivity issues. And as obviously we're talking about AI, but also really the mission is supporting increasing the adoption of technology in the industry overall, which is kind of it's a big task. But it's nice that we have such a 360-degree view of partners. They're coming at it, from very different angles. And even learning from each other too. So
As an owner, as an agency owner, I would venture to say that the technology in this industry is for me, it's one of the challenges of running an agency, especially in South Florida, where the majority of what I do is E&S business, where it's not standard, it's not no downloads, none of that. The systems don't communicate at all. A lot of apps. So what you guys are doing is critical, because I think that the smaller independent agents, really, if they don't have a fundamental understanding of their systems, of how they play together in the sandbox, how, which ones really can accelerate their growth, all of that is so critical. And we, as owners and running the agencies, we're head down, sell, renew, and the calls, but we never take a step back, or at least it's not priority initially, especially when you're just starting out, right, to optimize the technology. And if any newer independent agent is listening to this, really, I mean, don't wait to grow to then bring in tech, right? Because then you've built these systems in a way where then you have to overhaul them completely because of the technology that you're bringing in. What is your best advice for these, for newer agents, or any agent really, that also is caught up in this technology space, but then also has like the shiny object syndrome? Like how what's the advice also of, if you're new, I mean, you got to sell, you got to bring in some revenue to pay for the technology. Like, where's the balance with the tech, in your opinion?
there's no single, I think particularly now, there is not like one blueprint that's going to work, for every agency. Even as you mentioned, depends on your lines of business, depends on so many factors, where you are located, the size of your staff. But I think when you think about technology now, it's kind of a non-negotiable in how we interact, of just even culture in a society, of how customers are expecting to be interacted with. So I think, whether that is, shiny object syndrome is real, and you cannot be changing new systems. And unfortunately, with the pace of change right now, newer products are coming on. So I think, one, it's taking an audit, I think, of what you have, maybe even finding out, um, talking with your current vendors. They might be, I think everybody's kind of in an innovation mode right now. They might even be adapting something that you might, be thinking on from a shiny object syndrome, whether that is, some popular things right now, whether that's leveraging more technology from a marketing standpoint, or voice assistants, or even just things from an operations efficiency standpoint. I do think it's taking that step back. But and then also, you might want to be a technology champion at your organization. There's a lot of even just newer, maybe that is children of agency owners taking over, or they might be more familiar or experienced with technology. So balancing both what can fit within your existing workflows, and then thinking on taking on technology strategically, but also not being so tied into, say, this is how we've always done it.
Right.
That
There's
might not be
there's
able,
nothing that
yeah.
kills an agency faster, or a business in general, right? Than the "this is how we've always done it" mentality. Leaning into these resources could really, save you some serious money at the end of the year. If you're a larger agency that's, doing mm, certain tasks repeatedly for, still paying licensed people to do so, really, when you evaluate the services and the other types of the other ways that these same tasks can be done, and it could be a major time saving, efficiency savings, and obviously then saving you some revenue at the end of the year. Even with myself, what I've done was I created, when I was going to start to hire, I created columns on a piece of paper, and it was like, okay, well, what can I offload to technology? And then what do I need, a licensed person for? And you'd be shocked at how much your technology can really support you especially in the communication aspect, right? Which is also meeting people where they are. Do they want to be texted? Do they want to be emailed? All of that stuff too is critical. And do they want you to do it and take over the telephone, or would they rather just do it themselves online watching TV at night? It's there's I think technology also is allowing us to meet the clients where they are, and that's one of the positives of leaning into it and enhancing our workflows, like you said. Quick question on the workflows though. What do you suggest for an agent that really doesn't have any workflows in order? Like, where do we start?
To your point, a little bit on the even just from an audit of looking at repeatable tasks and starting from there. I
Yeah.
think what are you doing, or is maybe your front end staff doing consistently day to day that like you could build there? And I think there are also, other organizations that, whether you're involved at your state level at the Big I, there's other organizations that help very specific on helping agencies with process and building that out. And I think sometimes, depending on the agency, you can look for that help. But I think it's taking that step back
Yeah.
and thinking about what is repeatable in your business and trying that out, or what is your biggest pain point. And I think involving staff in that conversation is important too. I've heard that from
Hmm.
many agencies. um, Asking your staff where maybe some challenges are. We know coming out of the hard market, that staff were so inundated with a lot of things, that, we're kind of, obviously the market is changing a little bit right now, but, what are those things that you could offload so that then they could get back to also selling, or, having those focus on strategy or relationship building, depending on the role. Because we kind of talk about it at ACT too. There's different work groups right now, and it's thinking about, these tasks. There's technology that for people that are like working in the business, in the day-to-day things, that's the communications, that's the emailing, taking intake forms, quoting, etc. And then from an owner perspective too, I'm sure you understand like working on the business and how you see that in a bigger picture, and like having the conversations of everybody that's touching all is, helpful, I think.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. And I think that that's kind of part of the reason why we get caught up and just it's always worked this way, because we don't take the time to step back and really evaluate how well is it working and can it work better, right? If we were to enhance it with the technology. Let's get back to you on your career and just overall, not just in the insurance space. If you think back to the beginning of your career, what do you think was the best piece of advice you received?
Early in my career, I was at a place where my boss was like, "Okay, well, I think you're at a point where you can, we're gonna change your role, and you're gonna manage 8 field staff." So I think, I was so scared, and the advice is kind of was around like, one, change is inevitable, but two, like being out of your comfort zone, helps you grow. And I think, at the time I was in my 20s. I had never managed before. Most of these people were much older than me, so I was intimidated, but also there was just an lack of understanding. I didn't know. I fumbled more than I care to admit, but I also had an organization that invested in training in me. So I think it was, multiple pieces of advice, came out of that in training and development, but also, from change perspective. I think that was really a critical just turning point in my career is I was lucky enough to have people, see things in me and believe in me and invest in me. And I've kind of carried that hopefully throughout, my career. And while I botched up some things for sure, at that stage, I still remain friends with many of the people that I managed, at that time. And, you never know, where life is going to take you. And when you change industries, even.
I think the business world is small in general, not just industry specific, but yeah, it's, it's like growing up like behavior 101, you don't burn bridges anywhere, right? Like
Yeah.
you always just want to keep the relationships good because at the end of the day, not just in insurance, but business in general is just relationship based, right? It's so much of what makes business happen and move in all industries, and especially in insurance is, having good relationships, having deep relationships. And I like what you said about people seeing something in you and investing in you. And I think that that's critical. And I think that more leaders that give those opportunities or just even just the words of encouragement of letting people know, like, because we all feel it. We all maybe people see stuff in us that we don't see, so it's like it's nice to get that affirmation from people that you're on the right path and you might mess up, but it's okay. Like, we can just keep going, right? Just pick up and keep going. And really, in business and in careers, nobody has it 100% right anyways, right? It's just a matter of pushing forward.
We're all people here. So remembering that when things are, crazy or stressful, and it's nice. I think, people obviously work in different ways, but knowing, who on your staff might, need that extra encouragement or,
Mhm.
you know, advice, and finding that out, I think is so important too.
In your career, have you if you've had one, had like a mentor that has really done something that you can pinpoint that was a pivotal moment for you?
There's been a couple of those moments, and they're kind of like pushing moments, whether that's, I was in a role where I had my boss really encouraged me to get a certification. And, part of that certification was, like 40 hours of continuing education or whatever. And he's like, come back with a plan of when you're going to do it. And I was like, I think I could do this in like 2 years. He's like, 2 years? He's like, no, you have to do that this year. So, it's like having those, and I was like, okay, like I will do this 40 hours then, of CE. So I think, it's having those people make you like that extra push. Cause if I had been on my own, it might have taken forever to get this certification. But, I think it's nice to have that. And even just, I think, in most careers are maybe not so linear. Um, but having kind of that sounding board of anyone for advice, I think when you talk about advice too, one other thing that comes to mind, at the marketing agency I was at, our CEO's biggest thing was always like under promise and over deliver. And I think, I try to tell that to my staff too, even just like whether that's internally, at a business, if you're working with, collaborating on a project, or externally, building in maybe as much as if possible, building in yourself a cushion so that your reputation is on the line, to be able to do that. And I think that, carries forward in a lot of ways because it shows that you're trustworthy and, can get things done as if you're managing your time well in that way too.
I think also, especially in the time that we're living in right now with technology and how we have no patience anymore, right? And so we, like, as a society, we don't have any patience. We don't wait for anything, right? I mean, Amazon has ruined that for us. I think that that buffer, what you're saying of, building yourself a cushion to almost delight, surprise and delight your partners, your clients, your employees is a really nice touch, and it's a way to be memorable and also create the warm and fuzzies. And I think that it is in a time where everything is becoming so sterile and so tech and so dry. I think that that's a really nice way to operate, and especially with the rise of tech and AI, right? Like, I mean, we're all chatting with a brain 24/7 that gives us answers to things where we would have to research and learn things, and it would take us weeks to learn. And now we have all the answers in the world in seconds. So I really do think that is a really good cushion or a build in your career and in your business, obviously. If you were talking to someone newer in the industry, especially a woman in the industry. And since you're on the technology side, I'm curious to also know what it's like on that side. I'm on the different side, so I don't play in that space. But what is your best piece of advice for someone that's coming into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think women naturally can find their tribe, and I would recommend that. I think there's some really great pockets in the insurance industry in general that can do that. I think I was reading, there is some research out there that I think even like females actually are a larger percentage overall of the
Hmm.
insurance industry. They're making up frontline staff, but they're not as much seen at higher level
Hmm.
leadership positions. So I do think it is finding, pockets and networks getting involved. I think outside of maybe even your vertical, there's a lot of associations in the insurance space, depending on your niche area too, and your role. And I think getting involved there is helpful in finding connections, particularly, as females. I think we tend to maybe underestimate ourselves a little bit more than men do. Or even,
Hmm.
I was reading a stat somewhere, and it was like males will apply for a job that they meet like 30% of the criteria, where a female waits to like a way higher percentage. So I think building up that network around you that is so important for, I think, particularly females in this space. I think, I'm kind of newer on the tech side, coming from marketing. There's a lot of females in marketing, in the
Hmm.
marketing world and insurance. So navigating this, but there's a lot of, great women in technology too. So I think it's finding that tribe and getting connected and getting involved, where you can, whether, with your state or other associations. I think you'll learn just more and be able to, grow faster.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I agree with you on getting involved is critical for not just your professional growth, but also just personally being able to, bounce ideas, have a support system, not just having a bad day, but maybe, getting the courage to ask for a raise, those types of things where they don't come natural to most women, I would say is definitely it's nice to have a support and to have friendships and to have people that can give you honest feedback too, right? It's not always just good news, right? Like there is some constructive criticism that sometimes is required, and having it be delivered by someone that you respect and another woman also kind of just makes it easier. And I also know I read that study too about how women, like if they don't have 10% of the qualifications, they won't apply to the job. And how do you think we overcome that as women? Like how can we what get out of our own way?
Reminding yourself of what you've done. Sometimes, I do this on an annual basis of just like keeping a list of even projects you're working on, in a small way, and then re looking back at that is like, I think sometimes you need to do that even just, for internal reporting to your boss, but like keeping that also for yourself, of like reminding yourself what you actually are capable of. Cause I think, that sometimes, we forget that. So I think building up that almost inner confidence, is important. That kind of goes back to, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, candidly, taking on this role also is a little bit out of my comfort zone. But, in talking to people about it, it's like, eh, while I am very different than the two people that had this role or three people that had this role previous to me, I bring different strengths to the table than they did. So I think it's that balance of having confidence in yourself of what you can bring to the table, and then, staying true to yourself in that. And I think sometimes we might need to just write that down and remind our own
Mhm.
selves
Yeah,
of
I
that.
agree. I agree. There's a book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and it's called The Gap in the Gain. And it talks about how crucial it is. We're in business and in our careers, we're taught to go after giant goals, right? Every year you're picking a giant goal that you're going to try to achieve. But what it does to us psychologically and confidence wise when we continuously miss that goal because it's just so big. So it talks about the power of reviewing your wins quarterly instead of just stacking yourself up against these huge goals. And then if you miss and you miss and you miss, when you do that, it almost doesn't let you see the good that you did do during that quarter. So there's a balance of also like, hey, sure, you have goals for a reason to attain, more, but also like, what are you doing? Don't forget what you actually did accomplish during that time period. And so I like that.
Setting yourself too of like, I think learning, can be a win or, phase of your life, um, that you might evolve in what, is maybe even your true north of what you're trying to do.
Success is so personal, right? Business, careers, it could be personal. Like it's just there's so many ways to measure it and so many ways to quantify it. So it's really personal as to what it means to you and what you're, how quickly or what direction you're moving your own needle in, I guess, right? It's a very personal uh decision and conversation to have. So I think that the checking in with yourself is critical. I like that you said that because it's true. It's how we know if we're standing still or not. And then being able to do it in community also helps, to your point. Tell me what's it like to be a day in the life of the executive director of ACT. Give us a synopsis.
Different every day, which is so exciting. I've only been in this role since June, so it's been a bit of a massive listening tour. We are supported by over 55 partners that are, of varying background, size of business, who they are. So we've done a lot of just meeting with them to understand, their take on things. We have very active work groups. So I think the listening is a critical piece of this job for us to then inform whether it's resources of how we're tackling collaboration in the industry. And I think that also just is maybe one of my favorite parts too, is it's like everything you learn something every day. And whether that's a story of how an agency is implementing technology or from a carrier perspective, or even conversations that are such, I will say sometimes with AI, particularly right now, it's a little bit, there's some different sides of the coin on people's opinions on that. So, I think hearing that and how you move that forward. So, candidly, I am in a lot of meetings and Zooms, but I am also, excited. We're doing a session coming up, with all of our partners. So, it's just leading those conversations is so exciting. And then how we can support agencies.
Dealing with that many partners is a lot of meetings for you. It's a
That's
day full
good.
of meetings for sure.
It is good. It's all good.
Awesome. Well, I think this is a great place to land the conversation for today. Thank you so much, Kasey, for being here. Tell everybody where they can find you. Obviously, we'll put it in the show notes. All of your contact information, or if someone wants to get involved with ACT, how do they reach out?
Sure. Yes, so you can find any information about ACT at independentagent.com/ACT. And happy to directly email with us as well, which is just act@iiaba.net. And you're obviously open to connect with me directly on LinkedIn. We always are open for a chat on tech, or even I'm happy to talk to any women in the industry, be a champion. I've had a lot of those myself, so I'm happy to support others there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for that. Well, we appreciate you listening and hope that you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast.